This is the I'm Giving Notice podcast, episode 9.
This is the I'm Giving Notice podcast, where you get to take control of life's big three and have the career, relationships, and health that you've always dreamed of. Now, get ready to say, I'm Giving Notice, with your host, Mace Haroff.
Well, hello again, and welcome to the I'm Giving Notice podcast. This is Mace Haroff. I've got a special guest today. I am so glad you are here. He is a very interesting guy. His name is Dr. Rick Goodman, and besides being a chiropractor, he is also a serial entrepreneur. He's done so many different things. Back in 1995, he started a consulting practice to develop team-building concepts and systems that he shared with the corporate sector. In 2000, he became the VP of Operations for a neurology group, where he helped them to grow the company from 2 multidisciplinary medical facilities to 11 in just 3 years. He's started a real estate company, which he still has today. In 2000, he also started Advantage Continuing Education Seminars, which has become one of the fastest growing continuing education companies in its field. Advantage Seminars now provides a full lineup of seminars and products to fulfill continuing education requirements in 7 distinct categories, including legal, accounting, human resources, medical, construction, sales and marketing, and customer service. Dr. Rick Goodman is also a busy keynote speaker, and he is the author of Living a Championship Life, A Game Plan for Success. Welcome to the I'm Giving Notice podcast, Dr. Rick Goodman.
Thanks, Mace. I appreciate you having me on the show.
I appreciate you being here, Rick. Can I call you Rick?
Absolutely.
One of the reasons people listen to the I'm Giving Notice podcast is to learn how to escape a career or job they don't like by creating a new business or a new career. Now, you seem to have done this successfully over and over. Let's start with this. How did you go from being a chiropractor to delivering team-building seminars?
Well, Mace, that's a great question. I started out being a chiropractor, and I had looked at different doctors that were giving speeches and educating other doctors, and I thought, wow, you know what? I can do that. And I think that's how almost every idea germinates. You see somebody else doing something, and you say, you know what? I think I can do that. Well, I started to travel around the country and show doctors on how to build their practices and how to balance their finances and how to hire new people, because I wasn't really good at a lot of those. In my first 2 years in practice, I went through about 200 front desk people, and finally someone came in my office and said, if you ever speak to me like that again, I'm out of here. And to this day, I always say I'd swear on my children's life, I don't know what the heck she was talking about, but I'm sure she was right. You don't lose 200 people like that. So I literally traveled around the country interviewing people, finding out how they kept their staff for years and years, and I started to utilize those lessons and team-building techniques. I got a call from a company called AT&T, which wanted me to set up their 1-800-IMAGINE line. I worked in training them, and then I had started building some teams in the chiropractic offices and throughout my management company. And I got a call from another company named McDonnell Douglas that was getting ready to go through a merger with Boeing. They liked some of the team-building techniques I was using, and they wanted to institute what's called self-directed work teams, where the people actually doing the job knew the best way to get the job done. And some of the people that were the higher-ups in Mahogany Row weren't getting it. So we put those teams together to have some self-improvement, and we really ended up turning the company around, and they started really taking off again. Well, a friend of mine called me up and said, you should go back into practice, because I'd already sold my first practice. I figured, you only have a short time on this planet to get everything in, and I want to just go for it. And his name's Harold Lewis. He represents about 150 NFL players, and he said the Rams were moving from L.A. to St. Louis, and would I like to be one of the team physicians? And I had a 5-year-old son. I thought this would be a great idea, so I went back into practice and became the doctor for the Rams in the ambush, which sounded real good, but people forget that the Rams were the worst team in the 90s. They lost almost all the games, and then one year in 99, 2000, they came alive, won the Super Bowl, and it was time for me to again move on and do something different and create a new type of job. And what I did was I came down here to Florida, and I started with 2 clinics and built 13 clinics in 5 years, called Neurology Associates Group. And then we recognized that a lot of advertising needed to be done for these clinics, and we purchased the bus bench company called Martin Outdoor Media. And Martin Outdoor Media has relations with all the different cities. So we would not only sell the advertising on the bus benches, and the cities would benefit from that also, but if there was ever a time when our own when we had blank bus benches, let's say, we were able to put our own clinics advertising on there and utilize that. And then we started buying properties. So my partner said, you're a pretty smart guy. We're paying commissions to everybody else. Why don't you go get your license? So I went and got my real estate sales license, and then I went back and got my broker's license, because in the state of Florida, you can't have a business unless you're a broker. You got to work for someone else. And all the businesses tended to kind of intertwine in themselves. Well, I was doing a continuing education program for some of the attorneys. We had a lunch and learn, and my wife had gotten it approved for credits through Florida. So we decided they would come in and have a lunch and learn. We would do a program. My program was how to produce a more productive legal practice. And they would get credits, and they would refer business.
Let's stop for a second, because there's so many questions I want to ask. I mean, first of all, I'll come back to the legal practice, because I want to know how you went from working in healthcare to being able to consult with attorneys. Rick, I've worked with a lot of physicians, and a lot of them are miserable in healthcare, and their biggest challenge is they have no idea how to get out of healthcare. They feel like they don't have skills to do anything else. Their education has only been in healthcare. And here are you. You were working in a clinical practice, and yet you've gone from one thing to another. You developed different skills. I mean, seriously, let's go back to the beginning. When you noticed that there were problems in your office because you were losing staff, and you decided to start interviewing practices around the country to determine how they were managing their staffs. How did you find the time to do that while still operating a clinical practice?
Well, I had a great schedule. I worked Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, half day Tuesday, and I was off Thursday. So that was kind of easy. And you pick up the phone, you talk to people. See, I found that success is simple. It's only us individuals, as human beings, who think we have a better way. And I just look at modeling different things. And you can apply the skills that you have from your running a medical business to pretty much any other business. Most of the skills are the same. The technology may be different, but you bring in experts to help you with that technology. I focus on my strengths, not on my weaknesses. And for the things that I'm not good at, I bring in people to, so to speak, fulfill that hole that we have in the system.
Give me an example. When you were starting out to develop your seminar business, what type of experts did you look to contact to help you out?
Well, the first thing I did is I used my own expertise, because, we all have an expertise and that some of us don't even know that we have, or maybe we take it for granted, and we can do things that other people can't. So there were a couple things I looked at in getting into it. And the first thing was that I had to do my continuing education hours also, and really didn't like it. So there's two types of people. There's the people that just need to get their hours, and then there's the people that want to learn new information. And knowing that I had the pain of doing that, I recognized that other people would have that pain too. Setting up a management company that built chiropractic offices, building a law office is exactly the same thing. The only thing that's different is the computer systems and the general business, but the people skills, the communication skills, setting up, reporting and promoting and marketing is all fairly the same model.
How did you discover that? How did you discover that the skills you used in your medical practice were applicable to a legal practice?
Well, because, chiropractic practices are entrepreneurial by nature. We're a little different breed. When we have to do our internship before we even graduate. And because we have to do that, we have to market ourselves Whereas in an MD, a regular medical doctor, they go to medical school and then they go into the hospital as an intern and a resident. So all the numbers, so to speak, are provided. They're kind of fed patients, so to speak. They don't have to go out and build a business. Right. Whereas in chiropractors really have to go out and build a business. They have to learn how to promote. They have to advertise. I had to give lectures. I would do mall shows and spinal screenings. And I would have to go out and shake a lot of hands of a lot of attorneys and build relationships so that they would send business to me versus someone up the block.
When did you realize you can help them? You could help an attorney, because that's very counterintuitive to think that a doctor can go to an attorney and help him build his practice.
Well, first of all, the attorney makes money by settling cases, and they settle cases based on the doctor's report. So the better the doctor's report and the more efficient the doctor is, the easier the attorney's job is. And in a lot of instances, most doctors charge a great deal of money for their reports. So I looked at how could I add value, and I went to those doctors and said, listen, those attorneys, I said, listen, I'm not going to charge you for your reports. I'm just going to give you a great case and hope that you refer me business. And that's exactly what happened, because they were more interested in having a solid case and making more money in the long run than, you send me one, I send you one kind of business.
Rick, you started a lot of new ventures. I would tend to think that each time you started something new, you must have had some concerns. You must have thought, well, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I'm going to fail. What were your biggest concerns when you thought about trying these different avenues of entrepreneurship?
First of all, I'm always scared. And that, I think, gets you moving. It keeps you, it keeps you on your toes.
You've been scared every time.
Every single time. And I'm going to say that the more you know, sometimes the less chance you have of being successful. If you think about it, when we didn't know that we couldn't do something, we usually went for it. In retrospect, we look back and say, wow, that was kind of crazy. But we didn't know we couldn't do it. Nobody else told us that we couldn't, And that's the beauty, when we were real young, we didn't think we could. We thought we could do anything we wanted to. And everything that I've gone into, I've recognized that's a pattern. That you just have to go for it and take massive action, because you never know when you stop just short of success. I'll never forget a story. I was driving down the highway in Virginia, and the exits are really far apart. And I got this phone call from a friend of mine who told me that a classmate of ours had gone out on a boat with his dad and his dad's best friend, and a wave hit the side of the boat, and he and his dad's best friend went over the side of the boat, and they both drowned. Well, this was a very close friend of mine, and in fact, we had lifeguarded together at the beach, so I knew he could swim pretty well. Well, right in front of me, I saw my exit, which I thought was my exit. I got off, and I recognized I got off the wrong exit. So I turned around, and I went all the way back down the highway, and the next exit was 45 minutes away. Well, when I got to that next exit, I realized I went the wrong way. So I turned around again and drove back, and 100 yards past my original exit, where I turned off, where I thought I went the wrong way, was the right exit. So I actually stopped 100 yards short of success. Most of us never know if we've stopped short of success. So my philosophy is you just go for it, and the people that are persistent and consistent and just stick with it always are successful. So, you have to believe that that's going to happen to you, and being scared, I think, is good.
What you just described is very different than the way most doctors think. Doctors have always been taught to think based on science and to ask a question such as, what makes me think that I have the tools to succeed at this? And quite honestly, if they asked that question, they would probably say, well, I don't, so they would never even try. Did you ever have to overcome that, or has it just been your nature to just, move forward despite any fears or concerns you would have?
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that, Mace, because I always could not stand the people who would challenge the teacher and want to know what their references were. I say my references, I have a PhD in success. I see what successful people do, I do what they do, and I get the same results. And I recognize that some of these people aren't the smartest people in the world. They just stick with the formula, and that's exactly what I do. I do with what I say brought me to the dance, and that's setting my goals, knowing what I want my outcome to be first. I'm a big Stephen Covey person when he says begin with the end in mind. Most people don't even know what they want to have happen. And what I know what I want to have happen. I've created the life that I've wanted to have, and I'm actually living that life. In fact, my girlfriend said the other day, "Why don't you go back into practice?" And I said, "Well, why would I want to have to go to work every day and be on a schedule where I have to see patients, I have to do this? I get to create my own schedule and do the things that I love to do." And that's really the most important thing in life, because you're not coming back.
What do you find rewarding about what you do? When you were a doctor, the reward was immediate. You'd see your patients get better. They'd be thanking you. Where do your rewards come from now?
Well, one is I love helping other people. So, whether it's in my internet businesses and people are getting their credits and they're keeping their license or they're getting good information, or whether it's sitting on a podcast with you and helping, your listeners see that there is opportunities out there for them. I get by giving, and that's kind of really what feeds me. Feeds my soul.
That's very, very cool. Let's go back to all the different businesses and endeavors that you ventured into. You must have had one or two failures along the way, yes?
No, Mace, I haven't.
Well, I know the businesses haven't failed, Rick, but did you ever try something that didn't work, where you said, "Man, I must be barking up the wrong tree. This isn't good." Where you had to change course and do something different.
Well, we do that all the time. In fact, the last year and a half since my wife had passed away was very tough time. I was like Cain, traveling the earth, and Shirley, my assistant, was really running the company, and I didn't pay attention to my business. And when you don't pay attention to your business, it's kind of like the weeds in your garden. If you don't pay attention to them and pick those weeds, they're going to take over. And it wasn't until Shirley, my assistant, had to go to the Philippines because her grandfather was very ill, that I actually had to force myself to look under the hood of the car, so to speak, and see what was going on in my business. And we were starting to bleed money, in fact, and I started to see what was going on, and we really weren't making that connection. And I moved my web stuff away and started new. I moved my email system away and started from scratch. And within the first week and a half, we did about $20,000 in sales, and we were back on target. But it was really a matter of refocusing the business and changing and adapting with the times, which is what we're continually doing right now.
Advantage Continuing Education Seminars, you have a thriving mega business that really, really took off. First of all, you touched on it a little bit, but how did you get into providing continuing education credits for 7 or 8 different industries?
Well, it really kind of started with the legal. Like I said, in building our practice Neurology Associates group, I did a few different programs. One was how to create a more productive legal practice. Another was winning strategies for dealing with difficult clients. And then another one was professionalism and ethics that I co-produced with another attorney. At that point, I felt that my content of information was already met in the legal field. So the next thing to do was to go look for other attorneys that were friends of mine who had great content and wanted to be focused as an expert in getting them to do programs. I looked at the other areas and I said, I'm the guy who has to get my credits, so what other areas have to get their credits, have mandatory continuing education? And when I looked around, it was, HR people had to do it, and accountants and construction, in addition to legal, and then there were other opportunities for continuing education. So as I started looking at the different businesses that needed it, I started looking for other content experts that might be able to provide that information where I could not justify my knowledge base to do that for continuing education credits.
And I know your company has grown like crazy. We're both members of the National Speakers Association, and I know that a lot of the content experts have done programs for you and
yes.
are really getting just great results. Let me ask you.
In fact, one of our best programs was your program, Mace.
Oh, you flatter me. You flatter me. Listen, you're obviously, now that we let the cat out of the bag, you're also a speaker and an author. I'm going to get to your book in a second. But how did you find the time to build Advantage seminars, write a book, and travel constantly to deliver speeches? How do you do all that?
I don't sleep a lot. So I really, I'll sometimes get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and work for a couple hours and then go back to sleep and wake up again. My schedule is really on my own. And frankly, I have good people that I could delegate to that are experts in that area, so they can handle scheduling and web design and the things that I'm not an expert in. I don't play in a field that I can't play at a high level.
Let's talk about your book. The title of your book is Living a Championship Life, a Game Plan for Success. Can you describe some of the keys to your success that you wrote about in the book in about 2 minutes?
Well, the book was based on my year with the Rams when they actually won the Super Bowl. And it ties into some of the different areas that I've felt is important in order for you to be successful. We talk about positive affirmations, goal-setting techniques, time management, how to balance your life, healthfully so that you can enjoy the money that you are going to generate from all the services that you're going to perform for other people. So it's really a nuts and bolts book on how to be more successful with exercises in the book, very specific lessons and stories that people can relate to.
Awesome. It sounds like an awesome book, and I know it's been selling very, very well. Let's go back to the doctors, for example. It doesn't have to be doctors. Actually, it could be anyone who would love to be able to quit their job, venture out into another business, but they feel like they just don't have the skills. If you were meeting one of these people for the first time and they said, Dr. Rick, I only know how to be a doctor. I only know how to be a gardener. I don't know how to do anything else. What would you tell them? Where should they start?
They should start with doing what they love to do and live where you love. And when I say doing what you love to do, you may love. I love to cook, Mace. So I've created a cooking channel just with my recipes because it's something that I love to do and people love to eat. Well, there's a lot of people like me. I was doing a job in California for a large semiconductor company called Cavium Networks in Silicon Valley. And I had an opportunity to go to a winery, and it was kind of unique. And I looked outside, and there was a truck that it was just a regular truck, and inside the truck was a bottling machine. So I asked the person at the winery, because it had a beautiful view, I said, what is that? And she said, well, it's interesting. The person who owns this winery is a doctor, and he really didn't like practicing anymore, but he loved wine. So he bought this place, and now we have weddings on the weekend. And I said, well, I noticed the bottling car up there. He said, well, he also started another business. He saw that there's a lot of people just like him, professionals that loved wine. They weren't really winemakers, and they couldn't afford to get in one of these big operations where they were going to be selling or doing commercial sales. So he took a bottling machine, he put it into a truck, and now the truck goes to other people's vineyards and will bottle their wine right there. So it's a mobile bottling truck. He said, and then she told me, and he started another business where a lot of these people, again, they're professionals or amateurs. They're not professional winemakers, but they love it. It's their hobby. It's what they want to do, or maybe a small business they want to go into. So he started another business where he goes and he has a team that will go plant the vineyards and take care of the fertilization and the maintenance of the vineyards until they learn the process themselves, or he continues to do it. So he basically looked at an opportunity, no different than I did, and said, okay, here's the table. What are the other legs of the table, or what are the other corresponding businesses that might support this business or might have a relationship with this type of business that I could go into?
Well, this sounds similar to when you were setting up the multidisciplinary medical facilities, when you expanded from 2 to 11, and your partner said, hey, look, we're spending all this money paying commissions to real estate brokers. Why don't we have our own real estate company? How did you do that? I mean, you don't just go and open a real estate company. Are you a licensed broker?
I'm a licensed broker.
So you had to find the time. Let me rephrase that. You had to make the time to do that. While you're doing everything else, how did you do that? Because if I'm talking to a doctor, for example, they're always saying, I just don't have the time. I'm just busy trying to keep up with everything. The Affordable Care Act is killing me. I got to work twice as hard to make the same amount of money. What would you say to these guys? How can they find the time to do something else?
You do whatever it takes. I went to school at night. or you take a week off. So instead of taking your vacation to the Bahamas, you take that week and you go to school and do what you got to do to get your license, your degree together. It's really, I had a friend and he played this game, and the game was called the God game. And he would say, I'm God. I'm going to take your child away from you right now unless you find $100 in the next 5 minutes. And you have no money in your pockets right now. Having said that, I guarantee you every parent on this planet would find $100 in the next 5 minutes in order to prevent their child from leaving this planet. So no different than anything else is you got to put pressure on yourself. It's got to be a priority and that important. And most people don't make these things a priority until it's too late or, they've already taken some big hits. And that's just, procrastination.
Wow, that is such a powerful example because we all know it's true. If it was one of our children, I don't have any children, but I have a granddaughter. If ever in that situation, there's nothing that I wouldn't do. Why is it we won't do it for ourselves, though? Because so many people say, I'm unhappy with my job, or I'm unhappy with my relationships, or my health sucks. I need to lose 80 pounds. I need to get to the gym. Why won't we do it for ourselves?
Some people love complaining. And the second part is some people have an internal fear that they're not going to be able to do it, and that prevents them from even getting started.
Did you have those fears?
My fears are more out of desperation of failing. It's more of a fear of failure than fear of failure. And what I mean by that, I fear screwing up. I fear failing worse than getting started and failing at something. And that's what drives me, because I don't want to fail. I'm not going to fail. I'm not going to let that happen. The fear of that drives me more than anything else. I don't want to make anybody my dad growing up used to say, you'll never go to college. All you'll do is chase skirts and play hockey. And he was quite right. I did chase a lot of skirts, and I went to on a full hockey scholarship to Kent State and prep school. But that drives me, proving someone wrong. I think some people are driven by pleasure and accolades and the attaboys, and other people are driven by proving people wrong, putting those people's doubts out. And that's kind of the guy I am. I'm the short guy. I'm the guy who is always wanting, I ask who's supposed to lose the game, and that's the team I want to win the game. So it's just the way I'm built.
Watch out for the short guy.
Exactly.
We've been talking about success. Do you have a favorite success quote, something that you share frequently with your audiences, or something that helped you?
Success is just one idea away.
Wow. And has that proven to be true for you?
Over and over and over. Over and over again. And then we call them welcome to my life moments.
Give me an example of a welcome to my life moment for you.
Oh, they're happening all the time. Well, let's just say that first I was going to a cancer event to support cancer, because that's what my wife had done for so many years. And I'm writing a new book, and I was going to start using more of my athletes from the Super Bowl in it, etc. And I needed some big kind of hook athletes. And I went to the cancer event, and all of a sudden they stood up and they announced me. And then they said, well, we have another guest, and it was Dwight Stevenson. And I went right up to Dwight and started talking to him. And we've had dinner many times. He's going to be in my book. And then I was at the National Speakers Association convention, and as a literary agent, her name is Wendy Keller, and she's one of the top agents in the country, regularly getting big figures for her books, and she had just gotten auctioned off for tens of thousands of dollars. And I really, wanted to meet her and see if I can get her to work with me. Well, everybody wants an agent, and if you know anything about agents, they don't want you unless they can make a lot of money, etc. And I said, you know what, there she is. I saw her walk in the hallway, and I said, you know what? If you don't ASK, you're not going to GET. What is the worst thing that can happen? And that's what I say to everybody. I say, what's the worst thing that can happen? If they say no, you're in the same spot you were 30 seconds before. But if they say yes, you went to the next level. Well, I walked right over to Wendy. I said, I saw you being auctioned off. My name's Dr. Rick Goodman. I'm getting ready to write this new book. It's going to be talking about building championship teams, and most of the people in the book are going to be either championship baseball, hockey, football, soccer, any of the different sports, baseball, coaches, managers, or owners of the team, so I can get their view on what motivated them in order to help other people. And she signed me to an agreement right away. And again, it was one of those welcome to my life moments. I went and interviewed a woman who is one of the top women business people down here in Florida. Her name is Sue Romanos. She owns Career Exchange. And I said to her, I interviewed her. I said, you know who I'd really like to get in my book? I'd love to get Donna Shalala, because she has created what I call a culture of confidence. And anybody who's built a big business or any type of business, they create a culture of confidence where the employees, the people, really look to them and know, hey, I've got a leader in me. I know we can win the game or we can do this. And she looked me right in the eyes and she said, I'm having dinner with her at her house on Monday night. So I think when you start putting these things out, when you start focusing on the positive, and you're really in tune, those things start to attract back into you. But if you're focused on all the things that you can't do, you're going to miss all the opportunities around you.
You're just constantly putting yourself out there, and you're not afraid of hearing no. What happens when you hear no? When someone says, Dr. Goodman, I'm sorry, I can't help you.
I move to the next one. It doesn't mean that I don't feel bad. But I remember a Zig Ziglar story he was talking about when he was selling pots and pans. And he would get rejected at one door, and then he would drive cross town to just get rejected again, instead of going right to the next door neighbor who might have possibly bought from him. So just because someone rejects you right now, they may just not be ready to buy. I used to say, I hang up on people all the time, these telemarketers that call late at night. I've become very good at it. And there was one that would call all the time, was Frederick Roofing. And they would call, and I would get off the phone and hang up. Well, one night we had a storm in St. Louis, and a few of the shingles blew off our house. The next day the phone rang, Frederick Roofing. I said, this is your lucky day. I was ready to buy. So sometimes I think you have to look at it that just some people aren't ready to buy. Sometimes the timing's not right. And it's just the universe's way of letting you know, hey, you know what? We either need to look at another situation, or maybe it just takes a little more time. We were just shooting a video today talking about goals. And in the SMART formula for setting goals, the R is for realistic. And I always say there's no such thing as an unrealistic goal, only an unrealistic time frame. And you may not hit that goal today or tomorrow, but you're certainly going to hit it in the future. And I can tell you, when I sold my practice, and I said, I'm selling my practice, I'm going to travel around the world and speak, the first thing that my family said to me was, you can't do that. Who's going to hire you? You're a chiropractor. Well, today I'm happy to say I've spoken in every state in the country. I've spoken internationally. I've spoken at the National Speakers Association by myself and with my daughter, and I enjoyed proving people wrong.
And you just earned your Certified Speaking Professional, your CSP, which less than 8% of the speakers in the world hold the CSP designation. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. And like I said, it's just getting back to basics. Anybody can do it. You've got to be a possibility thinker. A good friend of mine, Willie Zell, said to me years ago, the first thing I would say was no to an idea. And he said there was instances that I lost money because I said no, and I could have made money at a bunch of different things. And he said to me, why don't you just say, what if? He says, by saying what if, you open yourself up to possibilities. So since he told me that, I've been saying what if. Because maybe someone comes up with an idea, and I think that idea is crazy, but what if it's not? You've got the pet rock and, the Post-it note signs, and all the people thought those people were crazy, and they're living in million-dollar mansions and retired today.
The pet rock idea, I wonder how many no's that person had to hear before someone finally said yes.
Right. Or the noodle, the thing that the kids use in pools that costs $5 to buy and may take 2 cents to make, So all these different germinations or ideas, no less than starting Advantage continuing education companies. I saw a need. It was a pain for me. I didn't like to get the credits. I recognized a lot of attorneys didn't want to sit in the seats because that took away billable hours. So if I could put these programs on CDs and MP3s, and they can get all their credits in one shot without having to leave their office, would they do it? And I knew the answer because I would do it.
And that was the key to your success. You really created it selfishly initially because you wanted to make it easier for yourself, but it turned into a mega successful business. Dr. Goodman, before we go, what was the most influential book that you've read that you'd like to share with our readers?
The Laws of Success by Napoleon Hill. And The Laws of Success, Napoleon Hill was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie to study the most successful people in the world. And he came up with these laws of success. And he studied Thomas Edison and Henry Ford and Wanamaker and Barnes, but he also studied Hitler and Napoleon because they had some positives, but they had the negatives that brought them down. And he came up with these laws of success, which is a laws of success course. The abbreviated version many people have heard of, which is called Think and Grow Rich. And that's just the, let's say, Reader's Digest version, because this version is probably about 600 plus pages. It's as big as the Bible. And I read that every year. And I read it every year because my mentor read it every year. And I figured he was successful, and if he read it every year, then I'm going to read it every year, because if he was successful, I do the same thing, I'll be successful also. And then I even instituted into a project. I called it the Alex Project, where I gave my son the book to read, and then he had to give me summaries of each one of the lessons, because one, it turned into a blog, and the second is my son got to learn the lessons, and we also paid him $100 for each lesson. If he didn't complete the lesson in the required time, he got nothing. So no different than any job that we have out there. If we don't do our job, we're not going to get paid. And I wanted to demonstrate him lessons throughout this book. But that's the best book I've ever read.
And you're passing it down to your children. How wonderful is that? Rick, where can people get more information about Dr. Rick Goodman? Where can they go?
Well, they could just go to rickgoodman.com and follow us there. They could follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Google+. And in fact, right now we're having the Championship Challenge, where we're doing a video series on the book and giving people challenges to set their goals, show them how to set their goals, how to manage their time, how to do affirmations, so they can model all the same things that I learned from some of the greats and have the same exact success also.
Sounds awesome. This will all be listed on the show notes page for Dr. Rick Goodman at I'mGivingNotice.com. Dr. Goodman, thank you so much for being a guest on the I'm Giving Notice podcast. And you have an amazing story, from doctor to serial entrepreneur. You've done it all, and you keep doing it.
Thanks so much, Mace. I appreciate it.
Okay, for everybody at I'm Giving Notice podcast, make sure you check out the show notes at I'mGivingNotice.com, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye for now.
This has been the I'm Giving Notice podcast with Mace Horoff. For show notes and more information about how you can take control of life's big three, please visit www.imgivingnotice.com.